Greetings, people of YouTube, and welcome back to another one of my art history, art criticisms, AI art, and my art videos. If you don't follow my channel, it's a bit different because I'm not going to just regurgitate the dominant narrative. I'm not going to tell you anything you can get anywhere else, because if you could get it anywhere else, I wouldn't bother. These are my own ideas, my own insights, my own research is represented here. And with that, let's get started. Today's video is about AI art issues. Do artists provide the idea and AI merely renders the image? I just wrote this article and you can find it on my blog, link in the description. Where does the real art happen? In the concept, the rendering, or both? What kinds of ideas are present in visual art? What does everyone miss when talking about ideas in AI art? Everyone misses something. I'm going to tell you what it is. It's important. It's huge, and you're not going to miss it anymore. Stay tuned. First, let's look at these two images. AI versus human. Left is a rendering by AI, and right a painting by artist Patrick Woodruff, if you know who he is. There is a common notion in dialogues about AI art that goes like this. Humans provide the idea, and AI is just a tool that does the busy work of executing the idea in visual form. The real art is the idea. We find a similar belief in discourse around conceptual art, which maintains that the idea is the most important component of art. This same sentiment appears in the familiar notion that the purpose of art is to start conversations, or that the function of art is to present an idea. Something essential to a genuine understanding of art is completely missing from this viewpoint. AI illustrates this quandary very well because humans formulate instructions for the AI to follow, and the AI does all the rest. People who are pro-AI art will frequently argue that AI has allowed anyone with creativity and insight to become an artist without having to do endless training at the comparatively menial task of learning to render imagery, whether it's by drawing, painting, or using digital art programs to digitally paint or do 3D modeling. You might have to excuse me, reading my own writing is difficult for me. When I write, I try to cram in as much as possible, but I can't read it so easily. First off, we have this image here, and this is by The Unclean. I got this off X. It appeared in my feed, and I shared it. I want to let you know now I'm not attacking the artist at all. I'm not anti-AI, and I'm not fully pro-AI. I have a nuanced, complex, and somewhat balanced view, which is changing all the time and evolving. I use AI myself, and I'm also a digital artist, and I've worked physically, so I am not on one side of the issue or the other. I am not the enemy. Consider the digital image above, conceptualized by The Unclean and rendered by AI. Here we are to understand that the idea of an angel slumped over in the netherworld is the brilliant element, and the execution of the idea is just craft, which the AI performs to save the artist the trouble. Finally, we have a much more efficient way for true creativity to express itself, liberated from all the tedium of mere labor. On the other hand, I've seen a lot of depictions of angels, and this is somewhat reminiscent of the cover art of Sad Wings of Destiny by Judas Priest. Incidentally, that's their best album. It has Victim of Changes, The Ripper, Genocide, Dreamer, Deceiver. And those are just off the top of my head. Epitaph, I think, is also on there. A great album, hard rocking and a bit progressive, much better than their 80s metal by my tastes. The concept of an angel who has fallen into hell or somewhere similar is not entirely new. Both images share a demonic sort of symbol, and in the case of the priest cover, it's the devil's three-pronged cross. See that there? When I used to listen to this album in high school, I would notice problems with the art, even though I thought it was pretty cool. The wings impressed me, but but it bothered me that while the figure appeared to be sitting on the ground, his legs bent at the knee as if he were sitting on a chair. Right? His butt's on the ground, and where do his legs go? Are there holes in this floor of hell that they're in? I don't know. His right knee bugged me, the way his legs connected to his waist, and so on. Yeah, it's this strange wrinkles and folds. Anatomy is very difficult. He got creative with this muscle. I'm not sure about this muscle in relation to this arm on the right. So this kind of image is very difficult because we can see easily when something's wrong. The difficult part is fixing it or getting it right in the first place. The challenge of rendering either the Judas Priest cover by Patrick Woodruff or the somewhat similar Fallen Angel image by Midjourney's AI can be leagues more arduous than coming up with the idea. A bit of an aside, but Patrick Woodruff is a consummate artist and illustrator, and his cover for Dave Greenslade's The Pentateuch of Cosmogony knocked my socks off when I was a teen. It still does today. As it happens, the double album is a book filled with his illustrations. Look at that cover. That's pretty amazing. I love the rivulets in the sand and the droplets in the rivulets and that strange skeletal creature with the horns. This next one of the whales. Notice in the background there's something like 3 Mile Island nuclear reactors, and probably the fallout from them, acid rain, is what's causing the whales' bodies to erode in this way. The colors of the flesh, the eroding, melting flesh, are just amazing. Here's another one that's very complex and interesting. Damned if he didn't also do the cover of Bandolier by Aussie hard rockers Budgie. Look at that. Very nice artwork there. Woodruff knocked out 3 of my favorite album covers from my own music collection. I bought all those albums because of the cover art, true. The reason Patrick Woodruff was called upon to create so much cover art was that there weren't that many artists who ever reached his level of technical virtuosity. Few have the patience or love of the medium necessary to get that good. No artist is safe from their style being appropriated by AI. And, well, someone else claiming the result is their own art. By that I mean someone will feed your art or type the name of an artist into the AI, get a result, and then share it on social media and say, "This is my art." The following pieces were made by Midjourney's AI after it was trained on the work of Patrick Woodruff. Midjourney, by the way, I think is the probably the most advanced and easy to use AI with the best results. That's contestable. Look at this image by AI. Even if you don't like it or you find some problems with it, the color combinations used are spectacular, and it's obviously based on Woodruff's work. Here's another selection, and these aren't even from the most recent rollout of Midjourney. Those are amazing, and had any artist done these 10 years ago before AI, anyone in the digital art community would know their name because we would have been properly blown away. Today, thanks to AI, everyone is a technical virtuoso on par with Patrick Woodruff, and some may even feel superior in that they didn't have to squander years of their lives alone in the studio mastering techniques that were soon to become obsolete. It's a bit like being able to become Mr. Universe without going to the gym. Not only did they not have to knock back a mountain of raw eggs, they got good or possibly better results in minutes without ever doing a single squat. All of this is enough to make digital artists hang up their styluses and tablets. But I will argue why not to in another article. Stay tuned, there's hope. At least I hope there's hope. I'm going to keep working, and I'm a digital artist. Initially, I used the example piece by The Unclean because it reminded me of Woodruff's cover for Priest, but I could have used any of tens or hundreds or thousands of other images. Here's a bunch I just nabbed from a search on X, formerly Twitter. Check it out. This one is not exactly my style, but if I didn't know AI did it, I'd assume a human had, even a year ago. This one, notice the skeleton in the back, how well AI got the skull down. And it's at, it's at a 3/4 angle too, almost. The hands aren't bad. It put a whole ship in. The ship's on fire. It's reflected in the water. The figure in front is reminiscent of a famous painting by Caspar David Friedrich, which it probably hasn't even pulled directly from because it's been pulled so many times before, including by AI itself. It's a bit of a conventional illustration, but very well done. This one looks like high caliber Photoshop art from a decade ago. This one I just shared to show lots of people are doing angels with big wings in compromised positions. So how original is this idea? Or is it the rendering that is making these images interesting? I can do this kind of stylized Japanese work. This one I quite like. I'm digging the head. The head looks like it's not in the tank, but behind it. But a little tinkering and we'll get there. This one I find kind of fascinating. The mind-blowing imagination, if we can call it that, of AI. The structure in the background that it created in seconds flat. What is it? Hard to know. Look at the figure on the right where her head is morphed into some sort of attire she's wearing, and the goggles are her eyes, and her leg is very disturbing where it's almost skeletal, but it's still got flesh on it. I can see what look like veins in the knee and those boots. Incredible work by AI. This is more illustrational, just to show that AI can do this kind of work as well. More illustration. Check out the skull. Very well done. This is almost frightening, and I haven't seen a human do something quite like this. AI has learned from human art, and without human art, without pilfering the vast record of human art, everything online, AI could not do something like this. But at the same time, humans have not quite done this. I've never seen something quite like this. This one would be great if it was done by a human. I love the explosion coming off the top of the head behind the sunglasses and the urban landscape with the backyard. Just threw in those chairs. This one is not really my personal cup of tea, but I just included it to show you how well AI now does faces. It used to be you could tell AI because of all the ways it botched faces. There's still problems here. This thumb has something wrong with it, and this finger is a little curious. I'm not even sure about this knuckle and this part of the hand. But sure got the face down. Everyone does their bee-stung lips as if that was original. This one knocks my socks off. It looks like something I would do. I am prone to be biased towards my own tastes. The concept guy with this, man, I have done women with alien heads somewhat similar. If I were to do this without AI, I would have to model it in Blender, and it would take very long. And I don't know if to get the man with the expression, AI is doing expressions off the cuff in fabrics, to do all these fabrics and get the depth of field so that these salt shakers or whatever they are, condiment containers, are slightly out of focus, but the heads are in focus. Choosing this green, kind of tacky 70s curtain or whatever it is, it all goes together so well. This is kind of an AI masterpiece. I'm really impressed with this. This is by the same AI artist. Again, if you had to do this yourself, it would be extremely hard. If we didn't know it was AI and thought someone modeled it themselves, like Beeple, who kind of uploads other people's meshes, but even doing that to get everything this in harmony, which is one great thing AI does, would take really a lot of work. Notice that the sunglasses match the eye sockets and the semi-transparent shades where you can almost see eyes and there's reflections on them. All done so well. Look at the wrinkles under the eyes. Look at the shape of that nose. And then that choice of a shirt and the pocket, the collar, the shadow under the collar, the backpack, the cars. AI is just knocking it out of the park. This would take weeks or months for someone, a human, to do. Here's another one I quite like by the same artist. And these last three, I want to talk to you a bit more about. They're all three from the same AI artist plus AI itself. And they use the same concept, though they are all three different. Just between you and me and everyone who reads this, oh my God, AI is absolutely phenomenal. People don't like when I say this, especially if they want to take full credit for what AI generates for them. But AI is a super genius virtuoso artist. In which case, people sharing AI art as their own productions can sometimes be posing as uber genius artists themselves. That's a controversial statement for another article. Before I move on, while compiling this, I discovered those last three amazing images, which happen to illustrate the point of prompt versus execution. The prompt for all of these, I don't actually know the full prompt, but the concept is like taking candy from a baby. Look at this one. I mean, this is just amazing. That AI nailed the feet, that the legs look like they could support this robot. Look at the calves on this and the thighs. All the wiring stuff. The wiring doesn't make sense, but it's art. And I mentioned in the caption that I think the artist changed the color of the candy, his or herself. I don't know who this artist is, so they might have put a lot of work in it. It could have taken tens, hundreds, thousands of hours, maybe not thousands, but maybe to really learn how to prompt AI. And you might be putting in images into the AI in order for it to base its results off of them. But also, I think AI could just do this kind of thing based on one sentence, on the fly. It's easy to get AI to do something amazing, but it's hard to get it to do what you want it to do. I say basically the same thing here. Look at this one. It's phenomenal. Notice the robot's left arm is melding into its leg. That's a mistake a human would never make, but give AI a few more weeks or months. The child is done very well. Notice how well the AI's feet are planted on the ground and the shadow seems to match it. The composition is quite good. I'd want a little more open area on the right. It designed on the fly street lamps. It's an incredible image. On the other hand, AI is now trained on its own creations in a feedback loop of exponential flowering of unbridled genius and has the power to create such images only based on a one-sentence prompt. Now, the artist may have put a lot more effort into it, but it can do things like this based on a sentence or maybe a few more things if you're lucky. It's easy to get magnificent results from AI, but harder to get explicitly what you want. Check out this one. If you had to model this in Blender or 3D modeling program of choice. I don't think you couldn't do this as a digital painting. It would take forever. This is another example where AI has done something I haven't seen before. I haven't seen humans, at least prior to AI, do anything quite like this. It's amazing that the creature has a kind of armor that is also soft plastic, melty, wrinkled, and padded. AI came up with that. And if you had to sculpt this little girl's clothing alone, which it made up in seconds, would be very hard to get the textures right. You'd have to think of the design and to get all the wrinkles. The real point I want to hammer home, however, is not just that making art on the level we see AI cranking out is extraordinarily difficult. The critical point is that the rendering of an image is itself an idea, or rather tens, hundreds, or thousands of them. They are ideas in visual language. Don't just think this is flowery stuff that we sagely nod along with, but doesn't really mean that much. Stop and consider how many decisions must be made when creating an image like the Planet of the Apes inspired bandolier cover. Remember the old adage, a picture is worth 1,000 words. We've inverted it so a paragraph of instructions is worth more than a picture. Now, the almost flippant idea, Planet of the Apes but with budgie heads, is more genius than the extraordinary effort and sophisticated mental gymnastics required to realize the painting. Incidentally, if you don't already know, a budgie is a parakeet, and budgie smugglers are men's Speedo-type snug swimwear. I just included that because when I first heard budgie smugglers, I thought that was hysterical. You could give the Planet of the Budgies idea to 100 artists, and each would come up with something different, most of which would be fairly derivative and uninteresting. The idea is a thought within linguistics. The person who is responsible for the concept, if it is not the artist himself, may have no image in his head to go along with the idea. Conjuring an image in your head is an idea. Let's pause and let me really get that clear. If you stop and imagine something, whatever it is, let's say you imagine a wiener dog in an astronaut's outfit, which is something that's been probably made into 10,000 AI images by now. If you imagine it, your brain's having to do work. The neurons are firing. It is an idea that's manifesting outside of linguistics. It's using a different aspect of your intelligence, probably even a different part of your brain, but I can't really speak to that. They'd have to do some experiments. I'm sure people could address that. Conjuring an image in your head is an idea. All ideas are not transferable to words and sentences. The ability to visualize is another kind of thinking that is outside and beyond linguistics, just like composing instrumental music requires all kinds of thought, which is not the same as arranging words and sentences. Music and visual art are alternative avenues to manifest one's internal vision, and in this sense, they are modes of communication unlike linguistic thought. In fact, they provide an essential role as checks and balances against the potential tyranny of verbal and written language. I don't know if I've seen anyone else say this, but I've said it a few times. This checks and balances where verbal language can articulate certain ideas and have conclusions. And a completely different way of sharing ideas and thoughts and feelings happens in music and visual art that can give a different story or impression. While linguistic thought unfolds in a linear fashion in an orderly succession of words like a train track, the whole of a painting can be seen in an instant. But do not think, incidentally, that the whole thing can be absorbed in the time it takes to flip to the next image on your smartphone. Yeah, you can. And think you're understanding the image. Vincent van Gogh is one of my favorite artists, and I never look at one of his best paintings and think, I understand this completely. In order to do so, I'd have to match his depth, breadth, and scope. My understanding and appreciation of reality would have to encompass his, and that's never going to happen. I think I get his art to a large degree, but not having made it myself, one brushstroke at a time out in the wheat field or the insane asylum where he did Starry Night, I can never quite fathom his own art to the same degree he himself did. That's a very nice painting. If you look at this up close, look at that brushwork. Just sitting there, fresh paint layered on fresh paint and individual strokes. All of abstract expressionism is indebted to Van Gogh's invention of this kind of use of paint that's so expressive up close. The speed at which we can scan a visual image is similar to how you can read a poem much faster than a novel. But to really get the meaning can take a lifetime. I like to joke about people speed reading poetry. Meanings in art aren't just the correct answers that we memorize to fill in a blank on a test. Meanings can be outside of language. We have the word ineffable for just this kind of experience. Ineffable, too great or extreme to be expressed or described in words. The ineffable mysteries of the soul. I don't think ineffable is only something that's too extreme for words to be able to encompass it. It can also be something mundane or just different or subtle, elusive. You could even say that the goal of art is to conjure or capture the ineffable. More often, the word transcendent is employed, to conjure such a sensation that is also the whole being greater than the sum of its parts requires a sort of alchemy where the artist or musician transfers a kind of awe into a work of art in order to share it with others. In this way, an artist is also an explorer, seeking new impressions to introduce into the collective consciousness. To make all of that subordinate to a declarative paragraph or a set of instructions, merely because those happen in linguistic thought and satisfy a reductionist and an exclusionary definition of idea, can miss or worse, eradicate one of the greatest capacities of art, transmitting knowledge beyond words. That was a mouthful. In the case of AI, the cognitive power required to make the image, at least if it were performed by a human, could easily dwarf whatever notions someone harbored while typing in the prompt. This is the most likely scenario because the AI produces images that would take human artists days, weeks, months, or even years to produce. It is a very curious phenomenon that in much of contemporary art, especially conceptual art, and in current art theory and criticism, visual language is not only sidelined, but can be completely omitted. In today's art discourse, the word has triumphed over pictures. AI artists who glibly state that the idea is the real art are merely echoing this idea from conceptual art, which originated going back to Marcel Duchamp and his urinal exhibited on its side on a pedestal in a museum. I'd like to further illustrate the centrality of the rendering of an image by comparing two paintings of the same subject by two different artists. In 1869, Claude Monet and Auguste Renoir, Pierre-Auguste Renoir, painted the same subject in the same context and with broadly the same underlying paradigm. Both were painting on easels outdoors, capturing what they saw in quick, impasto brushstrokes. Both shared the underlying conviction of depicting nature and the leisure class. And this as opposed to the grandiose history paintings painstakingly produced in the studio that were the hallmark of the Academy and the Salon. The two artists were working practically side by side, looking at the same exact subject and competing to capture it. The subject in question was a popular restaurant on the bank of the River Seine called La Grenouille, the Frog Pond. the results are markedly different on close examination. Let's have a look. Here's the Monet, here's the Renoir. Monet's painting seems thicker and more assertive, with broad horizontal strokes evoking the reflections, which he better captured, particularly in the lower right of the canvas. Renoir's production is more fussy, soft, sketchy, delicate, and wispy. I actually mean these in a kind of a good way. But he has also rendered the people and dog in more convincing detail, as well as the leaves of the trees. I didn't really notice this when I wrote my article here, but Monet's painting captures more of a range of light. The trees in the background are getting a lot more sun, and then we have a shaded foreground where all of Renoir's painting feels like it's in the same lighting. Not too light, not too dark. It has a more indoor feel. Neither artist could have painted the other's version. Each painting subtly and ineradictably reflects the underlying psychology, personality, training, experience, and history of its creator. To tease out the differences for yourself, imagine which painting you'd rather have on your wall and which you'd rather visit if you could walk into the art. I'd almost rather walk into the Renoir, and I realize because it's all in shadow and the people feel a little more welcoming and friendly. I get a real sense of the clothing. But Monet's painting I'd rather swim in because that water's a little more convincing and seems deeper. Which one I'd want on my wall? I might have to have them on my wall for years to come up with that decision. While in linguistics, the idea behind both paintings is nearly identical, the real ideas are wrought in the painting and the painting process itself. There's Renoir on the left and Monet on the right. Monet would never have presumed to take credit for Renoir's painting and vice versa. Curiously, people today will share images rendered by AI on social media as, in their own words, my art.
My, those Earth people are getting rude.
I like to compare this to using a chess computer to make your moves while playing a human online and believing that because you were savvy enough to employ such a tactic, you actually understood the strategy of the chess computer's moves. In the same way that someone using a chess computer to make their moves for them may not have any idea why the computer made the moves, or someone who uses Google Translate to translate English into Chinese can't read the Chinese, someone who uses AI to make an art image may not be able to fathom what their own ostensible art conveys. This is the case because there is an extraordinary amount of thinking or processing that the AI is performing, myriad ideas and visual language, as well as concepting, which are all involved in making the image. The would-be artist may only know if they like the result or not. When I say the AI is doing the concepting, I mean like in those paintings of taking candy away from a baby or a child, the AI will typically give 4 results and each is a different concept that it comes up with itself, and then there's all the decisions it makes to realize that concept. You cannot say that the artist provides the idea and the AI merely executes it in visual form because the execution itself is in another language altogether and involves potentially vastly more, much greater, and even more profound ideas than the concept in words and sentences. To go back to the image Midjourney's AI rendered following the instructions of the AI artist, the unclean, what impressed me in this instance was not the idea, but almost entirely the execution. Despite a lot of irregularities a trained eye will see on close inspection, such as that the angel's head is far too elongated from front to back. This is the case. Look at it. It's like E.T. The head is way too long. Or that the wings hover above the back rather than integrate into the musculature. Yeah, look at this. See how these wings, the wings should be coming out of the back, connect to the back and the musculature of the back and the spine, but instead they're just connected to each other as if it was a wing harness that the person is wearing. The details and overall aesthetics are exceptional despite these problems. Right, look at the folds on the legs, how the fabric clings to the legs, but the folds protrude. And look at these hands. They show that the veins are swollen because the hands are held in a downward position. And if you do that long enough and steady your hands, gradually you will see veins emerging like mine are now. But if you turn it the other way, the veins will disappear. So AI is sophisticated enough to render that. And it did the hands pretty well. Notice how the hair is in places clinging to the sweat on the arms. Brilliant stuff. That would be hard to think to do. If you're an artist and you were making this, at some point that might occur to you to do, and that would be an idea in art. And then you'd have to have ideas about how the hey, am I going to do that? And then even to get the curvatures, what curves, what angles, how random are they, how predictable, and then you have to vary it so it's not the same on both arms. This would require an extraordinary amount of thought and effort, even if it's semi-conscious or unconscious. An artist would need to have spent nearly as much time and effort as Patrick Woodruff did to create the Judas Priest album cover to paint or digitally paint this image. What's missing in the simple stance that the artist provides the idea is an understanding at all that there are visual ideas and visual language in visual art. If this is still at all opaque, I always find musical analogies much more accessible than talking about visual art. This is partly, by the way, because visual art has just had so much BS in it over the last century. Anything at all is accepted as art now. Anything anyone calls art, as long as they call themselves an artist, is art. There's nothing really holding it together. So music has not been subjected to this as much. And so people have certain minimal expectations of music, such as that it include sound or that it's listenable. Art need not even be visible. There are artworks that are invisible. There was a guy, his name is something Barry, and his piece was he released invisible gas into the desert as a sculpture, I believe, and the whole point was the art was invisible and it could not be seen. We don't really take seriously music that can't be heard, or we wouldn't really take seriously an empty plate as a meal and then say it is the height of cuisine for the last century. So music, we're able to think a little more clearly. So let me give my example. What is the idea behind a Beethoven piano sonata? My favorite of his sonatas is the 23rd, the Passionata. It's a tour de force, mind blower for me. Yeah, it's amazing. It's like rock and roll on the piano done in Beethoven's time by Beethoven. There's not a single lyric and there's no accompanying writing other than the title. At his time, he called it La Passionata. There's nothing to say something that the musical composition is supposed to be about. Would you say that the sonata has no ideas in it and is only menial craft? I hope not. If you think that, then you have not yet had the pleasure of thoroughly imbibing this musical masterpiece. Yeah, if you don't know it and you think it's just frittering with design and music, have a good listen. Listen to it at least 3 times. You'll change your mind. The notes, arpeggios, cadences, chords, octaves, key, tone, timbre, melody, and how they intersect are all ideas, and there's no idea in linguistic thought that is a part of it or can touch it. Right? There's no way you can write a description of music that can reproduce it and make the music unnecessary. Absolutely impossible. It is the same with the paintings of La Grenouille by Renoir or Monet. They use color, composition, movement, texture, modeling, lighting, shading, and so on. Not nouns, verbs, adjectives, subjects, and predicates. You cannot give an instruction in linguistic thought and take credit for a cornucopia of thoughts conceived in response by another human or generated by AI. By the way, if AI were conscious, people wouldn't be able to say it's just a tool. We'd be as unable to say that as when another artist does work. Lastly, this is not an attack on AI artists or artworks produced with AI. Again, I'm not the enemy of people for AI or against it. I'm really for all kinds of art, and to the degree I'm critical of AI, it's where it is replacing artists or used in such a way that artists who make their own art are sidelined, looked down upon, etc. But, an artist can make art with milk cartons. It's never the medium. I mean, I have some country music I love, metal. I'm bananas about the Qawwali music of Sufi Pakistan. Absolutely love it. It's incredible music. I have a yodeling song I love. I have some old Christian guitar with singing. It's what the individual does with it at their time with the mediums available to them. So an artist can definitely make real art, prompting AI with enough time and effort and some original ideas, and artists can do absolutely wonderful work, rejecting AI entirely and even being absolutely traditional. I sometimes use AI myself, including in my most recent work. You can look on my blog. It's called Mecca, Maryland, and I used AI to brainstorm and to explore ideas, and then I kind of got an idea of something. The AI looks kind of horrible, but what I did with it, there's no overlap. There's not one pixel that's the same. I absolutely changed everything. But I used AI to just kind of help me explore new ideas. I always want to do something new that I haven't seen before. But I'm not going to let AI do it for me. I do a lot of work that's completely from my own imagination. So that would, it needs to be my voice manifesting itself. I'm just pointing out that visual language is utterly packed with its own complex, nuanced, transcendent, and ineffable ideas. Linguistic thought is not the only kind of thinking. Stay tuned for the video version of this post. Well, I think you did stay tuned, especially if you made it this far.
Here's a song that was beautiful when performed by my ancestor Art. Are you going to Scarborough Fair?
Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme.